Kolkata is a city of many secrets. Its old buildings hold stories in their crumbling plaster. The narrow lanes, or gullies, twist and turn like forgotten memories. Sometimes, if you listen closely during the quiet afternoons, you can almost hear the city whispering. It speaks of times long past, of people who walked these same streets, and of secrets that refuse to be buried. I have always felt this pull, this strange connection to the city's soul. It is a place that never lets you forget. The air itself feels heavy with history, with the joys and sorrows of countless lives that have unfolded here, generation after generation, leaving faint echoes behind for those who care to listen. I often wandered through the less traveled lanes of North Kolkata. I loved the feeling of stepping back in time. One humid afternoon, near Chitpur, I found myself in a particularly old alley. It was so narrow that the buildings on either side seemed to lean in, sharing secrets. The walls were a patchwork of peeling paint, moss, and ancient brick. Sunlight struggled to reach the grimy cobblestones below. It was a place lost to the modern world, a quiet pocket where time seemed to slow down. I felt a strange sense of familiarity, as if I had walked this very path before, perhaps in a dream or another life. It was a feeling I couldn't quite explain, a quiet pull towards something unknown. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth and faded spices from a nearby go-down. Children's laughter echoed from a distant courtyard, but here in this forgotten corner, there was only silence. I ran my hand along the rough, cool surface of the wall. It was covered in faded graffiti and names scrawled by lovers and friends from decades ago. Each carving was a tiny monument to a moment in time, a small declaration that someone had existed, that they had been here. These walls were like a public diary, holding the small histories of ordinary people. I felt like an intruder, reading stories that were not meant for me. This alley was different from the others. It felt older, more secretive. The usual chaos of Kolkata, the honking cars, the shouting vendors, the ringing of tram bells, was completely absent. It was as if the entrance to the lane was a portal to another, quieter dimension. I paused, taking in the atmosphere of profound stillness. There was a sense of being watched, not by a person, but by the city itself. The old, shuttered windows on the upper floors looked down like tired eyes, holding within them the stories of all the years they had witnessed. I felt a shiver, a premonition that I was about to find something I wasn't looking for. I continued walking deeper into the alley. My fingers traced the bumps and grooves on the wall. Then, my hand stopped. I had felt something different. It was a set of carvings, neater and deeper than the rest. I squinted to see them better in the dim light. My heart began to beat faster. It was my name, Ayan. The letters were formed in a familiar looping script. It looked exactly like my own handwriting. I felt a cold dread creep up my spine. This was impossible. I had never been to this specific alley before. I was sure of it. Why would my name be here? Beneath the name was a date. It was etched with the same careful hand. I leaned closer, my breath catching in my throat. The date read, 15th August, 1985. A wave of confusion washed over me. I was born in 1995. This carving was made 10 years before I even existed. How could this be? I looked around the empty alley, feeling a sudden sense of panic. Was this some kind of elaborate prank? But who would do this? And how could they possibly replicate my handwriting so perfectly, a style I had only developed in the last few years? The logic of it all crumbled away, leaving only a deep, unsettling fear. I took out my phone to take a picture, my hands trembling slightly. The image on the screen looked unreal. My name, my handwriting, a date from before my time. It felt like a message from a ghost. I tried to think of a rational explanation. Perhaps there was another Ayan. But the handwriting was too specific, too personal. It was the way I looped my A, the way the N trailed off at the end. It was mine. I felt a strange connection to the cold stone, as if a part of me was trapped within it. The silent alley no longer felt peaceful. It felt menacing, like it was holding me in its grip. I stumbled out of the alley, back into the noise and chaos of the main street. The sudden blast of sounds was jarring. I felt dizzy, disoriented. The world seemed to be spinning. I looked back at the entrance to the lane, half expecting it to have vanished. But it was still there, a dark slash between two bright buildings. The carving on the wall felt like a brand, a mark that had been waiting for me to find it. The mystery was no longer just a curiosity. It was a personal haunting. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that my life had just taken a turn into the unknown. When I reached home, my parents could see that something was wrong. I showed them the picture on my phone without saying a word. My mother gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. My father stared at the screen, his face draining of all color. Their reaction was not of disbelief, but of a deep, buried fear. It was a fear I had never seen in them before. They looked at each other, a silent, panicked conversation passing between them. I knew then that this was not a prank. This was something real, something they understood. Their shock confirmed my worst fears and opened a door to a story I was not prepared to hear. That evening, my father finally told me the story. He spoke in a low, hesitant voice. There was a friend, he began. His name was Subhash. We grew up together. He explained that Subhash was brilliant but strange. He was obsessed with old philosophies, particularly the idea of reincarnation and time loops. He believed that souls were trapped in cycles, destined to repeat their lives in the same places. He often talked about leaving messages for his future self, clues to break the cycle. The name Ayan, my father confessed, was not chosen by them. It was suggested by Subhash, just before he vanished without a trace in 1985. The pieces of the puzzle started to fall into place, but the picture they formed was terrifying. My name was not a random choice. It was a key, a link to a man who had disappeared a decade before my birth. Subhash had believed he would return, and he had chosen my name as a sign for himself. My father said Subhash used to spend hours in the old gullies of Chitpur, convinced they were thin places where time was fluid. He would carve symbols and dates on the walls, convinced they were messages that could travel across time. My existence, it seemed, was tied to this man's strange and unsettling obsession. My parents had tried to forget. They had hoped that Subhash's strange theories were just the ramblings of a troubled mind. But seeing the carving in my handwriting brought all their old fears rushing back. My mother held my hand tightly, her eyes filled with worry. "We never told you," she whispered. "We didn't want to frighten you." But the secret was out now, and it had found me. The forgotten alley, the name, the date. It was all part of a story that had started long before I was born. I was not just Ayan. I was a living echo of a ghost. My nights became filled with strange dreams. I dreamt of foggy lanes and flickering gaslights. I saw faces I did not know, yet they felt familiar. In these dreams, I was not myself. I was someone else, living another life, walking through the same Kolkata streets but in a different time. I would wake up with a feeling of dread, the dream's unsettling atmosphere clinging to me like the city's humidity. The city, which I had always loved, now felt like a cage. It seemed to be holding me, refusing to let me go. The dreams were whispers from the past, and they were all set in that one forgotten alley. I decided I needed to leave Kolkata for a while, to get some distance and clear my head. I booked a train ticket to Darjeeling, but on the day of my journey, a sudden citywide strike was called. All transport came to a halt. A week later, I tried to book a flight. The flight was cancelled due to a freak storm that appeared out of nowhere. It seemed the city itself was conspiring to keep me here. Every attempt to leave was met with an invisible wall. My friends called it bad luck, but I knew it was something more. The city was not done with me yet. It was holding me for a reason. With a heavy heart and a sense of grim inevitability, I felt a pull to return to the alley. I had to face whatever was waiting for me. As I walked back into that silent, narrow lane, the air felt colder than before. I approached the spot on the wall, my hands clammy with sweat. The old carving was still there, my name, my handwriting, the date from 1985, but now there was something new. Below the original carving, a fresh date had been etched into the stone. It looked as if it had been carved just moments ago. It read, 19th June 2025. That date was exactly 1 week from today. My blood ran cold, my eyes scanned the wall, and I saw a final chilling message carved beneath the new date. The letters were shaky, hurried. It was a single cryptic warning that sealed my fate and bound me to this place forever. It said, "Don't let them find you again." Who were they? And what did it mean by again? The alley held its secrets close, and the walls of Kolkata whispered that my story, or perhaps Subhash's story, was far from over. The city remembers everything, and sometimes it demands that you remember too.